Hey, this is Colin Meeks, and I'm here with Ryan Stark, and welcome to another edition of our podcast, The Financial Advocate. Today we were going to go through just a real quick case study, and the reason we like to do these is because we interview a lot of different people and a lot of different professionals in the industries that we're in, and some people we've connected with over the years, and the podcasts that seem to get the most reaction or we get the most feedback from are the case studies, because people are really interested in what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And do I need to see a financial advisor, and what reason should I under what circumstances should I do that? So we thought we'd walk you through just a recent case study that we've had. We've done these in the past. They all start to maybe sound a little bit like the same thing after a while, and that's a good thing because it just lets you know that we have the same process, and we not that everything's not customized, but we sort of walk people through our process and try to, really find the ways that we can help them the best and find the ways that they can help themselves the best.
Yep, agreed.
So Ryan, let's, the recent case we're talking about, first of all, how did they come to us? Well, we do some trade shows and various resource fairs and things of that nature. And this was somebody we met probably 2 or 3 years ago. And they filled out some paperwork and left us their name, and we sent them a newsletter and just sort of kept in contact with them. And eventually something came about where, they raised their hand and said, hey, can we come in and visit with you? So that was, we didn't, it wasn't like just a out of the blue type thing. It was somebody that got to know us a little bit through all the marketing that we've done over the years, and sort of came in ready to go. And Ryan, let's talk a little bit about the first, how we go about that first meeting, just so that people will know.
Yeah, meeting with them for the first time, obviously, we always ask where somebody met us during that first phone call. But besides that, we just set up an initial meeting where we get to know each other. We take the time to make sure we're listening to everything that they want, everything that's on their mind. We take care of any initial questions we can answer right away to give them as much value as they can, so it doesn't feel like a wasted meeting. But really for us, it's kind of like a first date where we're just collecting data so that we can get ready for the second meeting, where we can sort of provide some recommendations and hopefully bring up some things that they didn't think of.
That's right. And we call that, we have a 4-step process, and we call that initial process, it's a 2-meeting process, we call that the foundation process, because it really is. We're trying to build a solid foundation on any future dealings that we have. We don't want to just meet with somebody, take 15 minutes and look at what they have, and then start throwing out recommendations. We really want to build a solid foundation, learn about them, learn about we have this our brochure, and we've got the WKYUAN, which is what keeps you up at night. We really want to learn about those types of things, that why they're actually coming in. And so under this situation, it's a husband and wife. They're in their mid-50s, and they have I think it's a teenage child.
Yes.
That has a disability. So it was something that we deal a lot with. So teenage child with disability, and the disability is always going to be there. It's not going to be something where the teenager might live independently at some point with help, or they might have to live with the parents forever. So that was one of their main concerns, and they had already been to an attorney to set up legal documentation. So that's always a good thing, because we always find that that's sometimes a hurdle in getting people to complete their plan. But in this situation, those were the things. There was some other stuff, Ryan, that came out that was really bothering them. What was that?
They had a lot of just different investments in different places. I think they wanted to make sure that everything was on the right track. The main goal was to focus on their special needs child and to get ready for them. And how we prepare for that is to look at everybody's accounts and make sure that the beneficiaries attached to the special needs document, the special needs trust in their case. So just looking in that, we start looking at seeing where everything is and realizing, I guess why they were having a little trouble is just a little disorganized.
Right, and it was really hard to manage. We always tell people, it's like when you come in for that meeting, you bring us your financial junk drawer, like that just pile of stuff that you've accumulated over the years. And these folks did. They had, each of them had about 4 or 5 different accounts, all different places, all different types of investments, and they were just, when we did the statement of net worth for them and showed it to them in the second meeting, it sort of blew them away, because it was like they never sat down and actually listed everything that they owned. You know, they sort of knew, hey, I've got this account here, I've got this account here, and it's invested like this and that. But as an overview or as a whole, they never really did that. So it's sort of that was sort of the first eye-opening experience that they had.
That's one of my favorite parts of the planning process is most people don't do that. They just put money somewhere for a while and maybe they watch their specific accounts. I know whether it's family members or friends, sometimes they'll tell me that they're watching their current 401k, but they don't think about the one that they had that's been growing for the last 5 years. They get statements and they sort of look at it, but it's not current to them, so they don't pay attention to it as much. And if that happens, you know, 10 years, 15 years down the road, it's easy to accumulate a lot of different accounts.
Yeah, and one of the other things that came out was the fact that they did have these accounts spread out. You know, we sort of did like a risk profile and said, okay, you know, here's, you know, how do you like to invest, and what do you think that, you know, how would you characterize yourself, you know, on a risk scale of, you know, whatever, 1 to 10, and you know, they were sort of in the middle of the road. They weren't too risky, and you know, they weren't, you know, didn't like a lot of risk. Well, when we started digging into their actual holdings of what they had, they were like 95% invested in things that went against what they said they wanted to be.
Yeah.
Which is a huge deal because, you know, 95% of their money was in a place where, you know, they weren't keeping an eye on it. And if, say, the stock market did something and went the other way on them, they were exposed to a lot of risk that they didn't want to take. So that was, you know, one of the red flags that went up for us was we need to look at this and start, you know, maybe recommending some reallocation.
I think after the last 10 years, you know, after 2008, everything's been going pretty well. It's been maybe, I noticed a little bit of shakiness, I guess, in like maybe 2018 or something like that, that really got last year, that got everybody thinking like, oh, now what's going on? What's going to happen?
Right.
Because they were so used to the consistent growth. So maybe that was one of the things that also a catalyst to like bring them in here. Right. Because once you see it start going up and down and you see the volatility in it and not just the upward trend, it starts to get a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And you know, that's when you start paying attention to things is, you know, when those quarterly statements, every time there's more money there than there was last quarter, you don't really ask too many questions. But,
right,
you know,
exactly.
You get that one at the end of last year, and it was, you know, sort of eye-opening. So that was the second thing. And then one of the other things we look at in the planning process, and because they have a child with a disability, and they've got some interesting family dynamics, in that in-laws view things kind of differently, and you know, they weren't really going to go along with their plans and things. So we sort of got into I don't want to get into the details of that on the podcast, but there was just some friction there as to how various in-laws were going to help them plan for their daughter, and didn't, you know, it actually forced them to draw up a couple of different kinds of legal documents because their in-laws weren't going to change, so they figured we have to make this plan work so that it works no matter what. So they drew up a couple different legal documents, and in a lot of cases you wouldn't have to do that, but in this case they had to because of the situation. You know, the other thing was we looked at their insurance situation, their life insurance, and severely underinsured.
I completely forgot. You're way underinsured. That was probably one of the things that they didn't even think about but we saw right away is, you know, they're just thinking about their day-to-day tasks and getting through the day, and I understand that 100%, but if one of them even was gone, they did not have the money to continue that lifestyle.
Right. And the lifestyle being, it's not like they don't live lavishly at all. It's the school for their daughter is over $40,000 a year to be in high school because she's in a very specialized school to help her with her disability. And the next phase of that would be that there's a college for that. And that expense is going to be there for at least the next 7-8 years. Maybe not 7 or 8, but 5, 6 years, enough, a lot of money that's going to be needed. So if one of them didn't come home from work at night, it was really going to strain things and put a hurt on the financial plan. So, you know, one of the things we do in the financial planning process is look at insurance, and you know, they were significantly underinsured, and for not a lot of money. I mean, you can buy, you know, I don't get into products or anything, but I mean, insurance is so cheap these days, and it's easy to get, and it's everywhere. You can go online and look at it, and it's just like for penny, you know, for a couple bucks every month or whatever the case is, you can really take care of that problem pretty easily. So they were underinsured, the investments were too risky, They had things spread out all over the place. They did have legal documents, which was good, and that was nice because now we don't have to go through the process of having those prepared for them with an attorney, and that's because it's number one, it takes a while, it's an expense. So now that they have those prepared, we can start looking at, what assets are we going to allocate towards those various special needs plans, so that they're in place like they want them.
Right. Also, I'm just thinking a really good piece of why planning is so important as well is, in this case, they actually came to us and told us that the family doesn't necessarily agree with how they're planning or the situation.
Right.
Sometimes families, especially when you're dealing with a special needs child, you can have different points of view, different opinions, and that planning is important because they'll actually be capable of planning around that issue.
Right.
And if it's something that they never talked about in the first place, then it would have just been this thing that happened that they never prepared for, and unfortunately it would be the child that would have to deal with it.
Right.
Because the parents in this case that we're talking about would have been long gone. So it either tightens up the bolts to make sure the plan is ready for the child, or it gets the conversation going to at least see where your family stands.
Yep.
What are you doing? What are you leaving? And it's, I think it's difficult because not all children, something I've realized the most, especially with the baby boomers we're dealing with, is that they don't like, or they never talk to their parents about money.
Yeah.
So this is an uncomfortable thing, but an important step
Yeah.
in dealing with a special needs child especially.
Right, and in this situation, it was the family basically flat out, I don't know flat out because I don't know for sure, but they don't accept the diagnosis of the child. They think someday it's going to get, there's going to be a cure, it's going to get better, it's just not, all this other stuff isn't necessary, and that's really hard to convince somebody if they're of that mindset that, that's not the case. So I commend these people because they planned around that, and they're really doing a phenomenal job in doing it, but, no matter how they're trying to educate their family and say this is really happening, it's the day in and day out that we live with, but one part of the family is just not buying into it, and that's a part of the family that's going to be leaving a significant amount of money, so they just need to, they needed to create these vehicles to be able to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So we've taken them through the foundation, which is our first couple of meetings, and then we did what we call the structure, which is where we actually build out that financial plan. The next step that we go into is action, and that's basically where we implement any recommendations that we need or they call for. And that's, they might be buying some insurance, it might be moving some accounts around, it's reallocating investments, maybe retitling assets, whatever the task list there is that we discover in those first two steps. We're in the action stage actually with this family right now, and we're starting to do a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
That never ends, but really getting it so that so we built the plan, and now we're trying to implement what the plan tells us. And that's really the core of a good financial planner, and somebody that's got we're working in a fiduciary capacity, somebody that's got their client's best interest in mind, because the opposite of that is what sometimes happens, and whereas you put the products first and then trying to plan with the products that you've had them buy, and it's just not the best way to do it. If we started just in the very first meeting saying, okay, let's start filling out these insurance applications and move these accounts around because they're not right, and did all this stuff, then we got to go back and say, wow, did we really do the right thing? Whereas if we do it our way and spend the 2 or 3 meetings together on the front end, we don't have to worry about any of that stuff on the back end. It just sort of flows with the plan.
Right.
So that's the basics of where we are with this, and then step 4 is our maintenance, and that's basically after we get all this stuff up and running, we want to monitor it, and we want to keep it in play, keep an eye on it, and that means we meet it once or twice a year with these families, and it's online. Our planning software is completely online, so they can pop it up anytime and give us a call and say, hey, I see that we're, maybe we need to make a little tweak here or there, and we can do that. Or in our annual meetings, we'll just go through the plan and just say, okay, here's where we were last year, here's where we are this year. This is the progress we made, or this is the progress we didn't make, and this is where we need to make some changes. And that's the maintenance phase of it. So it's basically four steps, and that's the planning process that we use. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of these case studies start to sound the same after a while, And to us, that's music to our ears because it lets us know, hey, we've got a pretty good process in play that, I mean, different things are gonna come out in the different stages for different people, but, our 4 steps are always gonna be about the same.
Right. And it's through all these steps, obviously we need information from you to be able to do this. So it's really a team effort in terms of us working together. That's why I also think the first 3 meetings, the first couple meetings to get to know each other, to start to feel comfortable, is it puts us on the same page, and then we really start moving along to do the right thing. I think if you meet somebody once, sometimes we have people come back, and it's not like they say one day they're conservative and then the next day they're risky,
Right.
but they do come back and they say, we actually sat down, we talked about it, we were thinking about it, and like boom, 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 then they have a little bit different of a mindset.
Right.
Those first 3 meetings gives them a chance, gives anybody we're dealing with a chance to look at their financial picture the way that we view it. It's something they've never done before.
Right.
So it's important to give people that time to kind of adjust, and then we can, really start putting the puzzle pieces in the right place to complete it.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, anytime my wife and I go into any situation where we have to make a decision, if we're going to buy something, we have that discussion in the car on the way there. Excuse me. We're not signing anything today. We're not moving. We're not buying anything today. We're just going to look, and we realize that. We know that you come into our office, you don't know us from anybody from the get go. So we're building that trust, and these people after the second meeting they left. And a week or 2 later, they called us and said, "Okay, we're ready to go." That's the way we want things to go. We don't want you to make a decision that's right away if it's not what you want to do right away. That's not to say that some people don't do that, but it's something that takes some deep thought, and you really need to analyze that.
Agreed.
And so, if this is something that you are interested in, please feel free to get in touch with us. Ryan and I are more than happy to talk to you on the phone, walk you through our process, go through fees and costs and all that stuff that everybody wants to know about. We just had a couple of brochures done that walks you through what we just talked about, so it's got our process and what you get and what the steps look like and all that and the costs. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to get in touch with us. You can either hit our website or just shoot us an email. So I hope you enjoyed this case study, and we really look forward to doing some more of these down the line. Thanks.
Thanks.